The awakening of the supercarrier. The cold silence of space was broken by an unexpected pulse. It was faint at first, just a ripple in the vast emptiness. Yet over the course of days, the signal grew stronger, more distinct. It was not a natural phenomenon. This was something unnatural, something deliberate. No one knew where it had come from or why, but everyone felt its presence. For years, the human race had been content with their place in the galaxy. They had established peaceful relations with nearby species, their influence slowly growing, but always in the shadows of more powerful civilizations. No one thought Earth's ancient history held any real secrets, just dusty old tales passed down through generations. One such tale was the story of a lost weapon, the greatest creation humanity had ever built, a supercarrier. No one had seen it for centuries, and no one truly believed it existed anymore. But now, this strange signal was drawing attention. A signal that, despite all odds, was unmistakably coming from the long-forgotten remains of that very ship. Commander Lara Briggs stood at the helm of the Earth Defense Council's command station, staring at the blinking lights of the incoming data. The signal had been detected just beyond the outskirts of the solar system. The source, a place in the galaxy thought to be a dead zone, far from human exploration routes. "This can't be real," Lara muttered under her breath. "The supercarrier was lost long ago, after the war. It's just a myth, isn't it?" But the signal, growing stronger by the hour, suggested otherwise. The Council knew they had to investigate. The supercarrier, if it truly existed, could be humanity's greatest weapon or a deadly threat, depending on who controlled it. A team of experts, including the best engineers and military tacticians from Earth, was assembled. Their mission was clear: find the source of the signal, learn what had awakened it, and determine if humanity was ready for what was to come. The first task was to gather a fleet of ships to travel toward the source. The journey would take days, even weeks, but every moment was critical. A small group of advanced reconnaissance ships, equipped with the latest technology, set off toward the coordinates. As the ships ventured further from Earth, the signal became clearer, more defined. The crew began to realize they weren't just tracking an old relic. They were tracing a living, breathing presence in space. The supercarrier, if it truly was the supercarrier, had been dormant for centuries. Yet now it was awake. The tension among the crew grew as they closed in on the signal source. What they discovered would be beyond anything they had ever imagined. Floating in the black void, the supercarrier appeared as a dark shape on the horizon, its massive structure partially obscured by the vastness of space. It was huge, easily larger than any ship the humans had ever seen, with sleek, angular lines that seemed both alien and familiar. It had the unmistakable look of something designed for war, a ship built to destroy. As the reconnaissance fleet approached, their sensors began to pick up strange readings. The supercarrier's energy signature was unlike anything they had ever encountered. It was as if the ship had never truly powered down. It had simply been in hibernation, waiting for the right moment to awaken. "Sir," one of the engineers on the fleet's flagship spoke up, his voice tense. "The supercarrier, it's alive. We can't even begin to understand the kind of technology that's powering it. This isn't anything from Earth's known history." Commander Briggs' eyes narrowed as she scanned the data. The supercarrier had been designed by Earth's ancestors in their darkest days, a time when humanity had been on the brink of extinction, fighting off invaders from across the galaxy. It was meant to be a weapon of last resort, built with technology far beyond anything Earth had ever used. But why had it been hidden away? Why had it been left to sleep for so long? Before Briggs could speak, an alarm sounded. Something was wrong. The supercarrier was no longer passive. It was responding to their presence. "Evasive maneuvers," Briggs barked. The fleet scrambled to react, but it was too late. The supercarrier's weapon systems powered up, sending shockwaves through space. Beams of concentrated energy shot out, narrowly missing the reconnaissance fleet. But the message was clear. The supercarrier was ready for battle. "We need to get a closer look at the ship," Commander Briggs said. "This could be humanity's greatest chance, or its greatest threat." The fleet edged closer, knowing that their mission had just shifted. They had come to investigate, but now they were caught in a race against time. The supercarrier wasn't just dormant anymore. It was awakening, and they had no idea what would happen next. As they drew closer, the full scope of the ship's size became apparent. It was enormous, more massive than anything they could have prepared for. Its hull was covered in strange markings, some ancient, some clearly more recent, as if someone had been maintaining it. But who? And why now? The crew members on the reconnaissance ships couldn't help but feel a strange sense of awe mixed with fear. This wasn't just any ship. This was humanity's last hope, or the galaxy's greatest mistake. As the fleet continued their approach, the signals coming from the supercarrier grew more intense. The ship was no longer simply a relic from the past. It was a powerful, living thing, ready to take action. What had awakened the supercarrier, and what did humanity's ancient weapon want now? The answer lay ahead, but one thing was certain: the galaxy would never be the same again. The awakening begins. The silence of space was broken by the tremor of something ancient, something powerful. As Commander Lara Briggs and her fleet continued their cautious approach, they could feel the air change. The supercarrier, once thought to be a myth, was no longer a distant relic. It was alive, responding to their presence. The signals from the ship were no longer faint whispers. They were bold, aggressive, and filled with purpose. The supercarrier's enormous shape loomed in front of them like a sleeping giant, its dark silhouette stretching across the horizon of space. But now it seemed to pulse with energy, almost as if it were awakening from a long, deep slumber. The galaxy's greatest forgotten weapon was stirring. Briggs stared at the massive ship on her monitors, trying to suppress the unease creeping up her spine. It wasn't just the size of the supercarrier that was intimidating. It was the history that came with it. Built during Earth's most desperate times, it was designed to be a weapon of last resort, capable of destroying entire fleets with a single strike. Its creators had hoped it would never be used, that peace would prevail. But peace had never been guaranteed in the galaxy, and now that peace seemed threatened by the very thing meant to protect it. The crew on the flagship, the Odyssey, worked furiously at their stations. The engineers were scrambling to analyze the supercarrier systems, trying to understand its power and how it had come back to life. The ship's energy signature fluctuated wildly, almost as if it were responding to something they couldn't see. Its weapon systems were powering up again, sending shockwaves through space. The crew had to act fast. "Commander, we can't hold back any longer," said Lieutenant Harris, the fleet's chief tactician. "The ship's energy levels are spiking. It's going to fire again." Briggs didn't hesitate. "All ships, prepare for evasive maneuvers. We need to find out what we're dealing with, but we need to stay alive long enough to do it." The fleet scattered, each ship veering in a different direction as the supercarrier's weapons fired another burst of concentrated energy. The beams missed, but the raw power of the shots was undeniable. It wasn't just a dormant warship. It was a weapon that had been waiting for a trigger. And that trigger, it seemed, had been their presence. As the Odyssey and its fleet moved farther out of range, Briggs' mind raced. They had come to investigate a relic, to learn about the lost weapon of humanity's past. Now, they were fighting for survival. The question remained: why had the supercarrier suddenly come to life? What had awakened it after all these centuries? "Commander, we're picking up new signals," said Ensign Ortiz from the communication station. "There's a transmission coming from the supercarrier. It's not a normal transmission. It's almost like a message." "A message?" Briggs asked, her voice tight with concern. "From who?" "We don't know yet," Ortiz replied. "But the signals are coming from within the ship. It's not just energy surges. It's something else." "Put it on screen," Briggs ordered, her eyes narrowing. The crew fell silent as the message began to unfold. The display flickered, and for a brief moment, the crew could see nothing but static. Then, slowly, words began to appear on the screen. They weren't in any language the crew could recognize, but the letters, glowing brightly against the darkness of space, were undeniably human. Warning: the supercarrier is awake. Prepare for contact. The words blinked on the screen for a moment before the transmission cut off. The room was filled with stunned silence, a message from the supercarrier itself. The last communication from a long-forgotten human ship. What did it mean? And why now? What does it mean, Commander? Lieutenant Harris asked, breaking the silence. Briggs didn't have an answer. All she knew was that the supercarrier was not the harmless relic they had once thought it was. It was something much more dangerous, and it was clearly sending a message. We need to know what happened to it, Briggs said. There has to be something on board that can explain this. We have to board the supercarrier. The decision was made. The Odyssey would lead the charge, with the other ships in the fleet standing by for support. They couldn't risk leaving this mystery unsolved. The stakes were far too high. The fleet moved closer to the supercarrier, this time with more caution. As they approached, a strange feeling washed over the crew. It wasn't just fear, it was awe. The ship before them was not just a machine. It was a symbol of humanity's strength and ambition. But it was also a reminder of their darkest days, when survival was uncertain and the future was grim. We're coming in, Briggs said quietly, almost to herself. Whatever happens next, we need to be ready for anything. The supercarrier loomed closer, its massive shape filling the view screen. Every member of the crew felt the weight of the moment. They were about to board the most powerful human vessel ever built, an artifact of a forgotten time, and discover what had caused its long hibernation. But they also knew one thing. This wasn't just about investigating an ancient ship. It was about securing humanity's future, or risking everything. As the Odyssey closed in on the supercarrier, the tension on board was palpable. The message was clear. The awakening had begun, and whatever came next would change everything. The fate of humanity and the galaxy was about to be decided. The awakening continues. The Odyssey approached the supercarrier with cautious precision, its crew bracing for the unknown. Commander Laura Briggs stood at the front of the bridge, staring out at the massive silhouette of the ship that had once been humanity's greatest hope. Now, it seemed like a dark omen, its vast, silent structure looming like a shadow over them. But even in its stillness, the supercarrier exuded an unmistakable sense of power. The awakening had only just begun, and they were about to uncover its secrets. Briggs couldn't help but wonder what had happened to the crew of the supercarrier. Had they perished long ago, leaving the ship to drift in the emptiness of space, or had the ship been abandoned, left to slumber until the right moment arrived? She needed answers, and she needed them fast. The fate of humanity could very well rest on what they found inside. Commander, we're receiving another transmission, Ensign Ortiz reported from the communications console. Her voice was tinged with urgency, and the crew fell silent, anticipating what would come next. Put it on the screen, Briggs ordered, her hand tightening on the armrest of her chair. Once again, the screen flickered to life, and the crew watched in silence as a stream of glowing characters filled the display. This time, the message was clearer, more coherent. The words flashed across the screen, each one sending a shiver down the spine of the crew. Activate Protocol 0. Prepare for reactivation. Humanity's last stand is upon you. The message was brief but powerful, each word heavy with meaning. Protocol 0. What was that? The crew exchanged uneasy glances, trying to make sense of what they had just heard. Was this some kind of fail-safe, a last line of defense put in place by the creators of the supercarrier? Sir, what does it mean? Lieutenant Harris asked, his voice filled with confusion. Briggs stood still, her thoughts racing. I don't know, but we're about to find out. Without hesitation, Briggs gave the order to board the supercarrier. They needed to move fast before the situation escalated further. The supercarrier was waking up, and it wasn't waiting for anyone. As the Odyssey approached, the crew prepared to descend into the heart of the ship. Outside the Odyssey, the docking bay doors of the supercarrier slowly creaked open, revealing a dark, cavernous interior. The ship's structure was far larger than any of them had imagined. Its hangars were vast, seemingly endless. They were entering a ship that was a city unto itself, with corridors that stretched for miles, each one waiting to be explored. "Get ready for anything," Briggs said, her voice calm but firm. "We don't know what we'll find inside." The crew suited up, their faces set with determination. They were about to step into the unknown, into the belly of a long-forgotten war machine. As the docking bay doors opened fully, the team began to descend into the supercarrier's depths. The interior of the supercarrier was unlike anything any of them had ever seen. The walls were lined with advanced technology, their surfaces glowing with strange lights. The air was cold, and the sound of their boots echoing on the metallic floor was the only noise to be heard. It was clear that the ship had been dormant for a long time, yet something about it felt alive, as though it were waiting for their arrival. They moved cautiously through the corridors, their steps slow but deliberate. The ship's interior was vast and complex, filled with rooms and hallways that twisted and turned in every direction. It was almost as though the ship was designed to be a maze, its creators anticipating the need for secrecy. "Keep your eyes open," Briggs warned her team. "Stay sharp. This ship was built for war. There's no telling what kind of security systems it might have." As they advanced deeper into the supercarrier, they came across something unexpected. A door, different from the others. It was large, reinforced with thick steel, and covered in symbols that none of them could understand. It looked as though it had been untouched for centuries. "We need to open this," said Sergeant Morgan, the team's security expert. "This is where we'll find the answers we need." The door resisted at first, its massive locks not yielding easily. But after a few minutes of careful work, the team managed to force the door open. It slid with a mechanical groan, revealing a large chamber beyond. Inside, the room was filled with rows of consoles, each one covered in dust and cobwebs. But at the far end of the room, a single pedestal stood, bathed in the glow of a faint light. On top of the pedestal was a small, sleek device, its design unlike anything the team had ever seen before. "This must be it," Briggs whispered. "This is what triggered the awakening." The device seemed to pulse with energy, its surface glowing with a soft, blue light. It was beautiful and dangerous at the same time, an object of unknown power and unimaginable potential. As Briggs stepped forward to inspect it, the device suddenly activated. The room filled with a low hum, and the consoles around them flickered to life. The supercarrier had truly awakened, and as the hum grew louder, the crew realized something far more troubling. The ship was not just coming to life. It was preparing for war. "Brace yourselves," Briggs said, her voice steady but filled with urgency. "We've triggered something far bigger than we ever imagined." The awakening had only just begun, and now there was no turning back, unleashing the supercarrier's power. As the hum of the supercarrier intensified, the crew could feel the ship come to life around them. The walls vibrated slightly as systems powered up, and strange, unfamiliar lights blinked to life throughout the chamber. Every sound, every movement was filled with an eerie sense of purpose. The ship, a relic of humanity's past, was no longer dormant. It was alive, and it was awakening with a force no one had anticipated. "Commander Briggs, something's wrong," Ensign Ortiz reported, her eyes wide as she stared at her screen. "The energy readings are off the charts. It's like the entire ship is charging up." Briggs didn't respond immediately. Her eyes were locked on the pedestal in the center of the room. The mysterious device had begun to pulse faster, its soft glow now becoming a brilliant, flashing light. It was as if the ship's heart was beating again, but this time, the sound wasn't peaceful. It was a warning. "Everyone, get to the exits," Briggs ordered firmly. "We don't know what kind of power we're dealing with. We need to move now." But as the crew began to retreat toward the doors, the lights above them flickered and a loud mechanical grinding sound echoed through the hall. The supercarrier was far more than just a warship. It was a fortress, and it was preparing for something. Without warning, the ground beneath them trembled. The walls shook as enormous doors within the ship began to open, revealing vast chambers filled with rows of weapons. But these weren't just any weapons. These were the creations of humanity's greatest engineers, designed to protect Earth at all costs. And now, they were waking up. "By the stars," Sergeant Morgan muttered under his breath as he stepped back, his eyes wide with disbelief. This is what they left behind. This is what humanity had built, just in case. The ship's bay doors were opening wide, revealing the true scale of the supercarrier's power. Long-range cannons, missile systems, and energy-based weaponry all powered on, each one more terrifying than the last. But that wasn't all. As they moved deeper into the ship, Briggs noticed something else, something more chilling. The crew arrived at a massive control room, one that stretched as far as the eye could see. It was built to command the entire ship, and it was here that they would truly understand the supercarrier's purpose. Behind the control panel, rows of holographic displays flickered to life. On one of them, a map of the galaxy appeared, with Earth marked at its center. But something was wrong. The map was changing. "We're under attack," Lieutenant Harris gasped, his voice trembling as he pointed to the screen. "There are ships moving toward Earth. The Galactic Coalition is making its move." Briggs narrowed her eyes. The pieces were falling into place, but the urgency of the situation made her feel as though they were running out of time. "Activate the defense systems," she commanded. "We need to prepare for what's coming." The ship responded instantly, its weapons systems coming online, and targeting coordinates with unrelenting precision. As the crew scrambled to understand the controls, the air grew thick with tension. The Odyssey and its crew weren't prepared for a full-scale battle with the Galactic Coalition. They had no idea just how far the supercarrier could take them, or if they could survive the oncoming storm. "What about the device?" Ensign Ortiz asked, her voice tinged with concern. "What happens if we keep it activated?" Briggs glanced at the pedestal. The device was now emitting a continuous pulse, its light flashing rapidly. It seemed to be communicating with the ship, sensing its energy with the power of the supercarrier. The ship's movements were no longer random. They were deliberate. Every action was calculated, as if the ship had its own purpose. "We need to find out what it does," Briggs said firmly, her determination shining through. "If we don't, it could cost us everything." With the map of the galaxy still glowing on the screen, Briggs focused on the incoming enemy ships. They weren't just heading toward Earth, they were heading toward humanity's last stand. The supercarrier had awakened just in time, but was it enough? "Prepare for battle," she ordered. "We may be the only line of defense between Earth and the Galactic Coalition." As the crew rushed to their positions, Briggs took one last look at the holographic map. The enemy ships were closing in, and it seemed that the fate of the galaxy now rested in their hands. The supercarrier had been resurrected, but would it be enough to face the coming war? The ship's weapons fired up with an intensity that rattled the very bones of its crew. The tension in the air was palpable, and for the first time since entering the supercarrier, Commander Briggs felt a cold sense of certainty. The awakening was just the beginning. The battle for humanity's future was about to begin, and the supercarrier was ready to make its mark on the galaxy once again. But would it be enough to stop the Galactic Coalition? The battle begins. The supercarrier's engines roared to life as the crew scrambled to take their positions. Commander Briggs stood at the bridge, staring at the massive holographic display showing the approaching enemy ships. The Galactic Coalition was closing in fast, and time was running out. "Prepare all weapon systems for immediate launch," Briggs ordered, her voice steady but laced with urgency. We don't know how long we can hold them off, but we'll give Earth everything we've got." The crew worked feverishly, hands flying across consoles as they activated the ship's weapons, checked the shield integrity, and made final adjustments to the targeting systems. The supercarrier, despite its age, was brimming with power, and every part of the ship seemed to respond as though it had been waiting for this moment. Ensign Ortiz glanced nervously at the control panel, her fingers trembling as she input commands. "Commander, the enemy is just outside range." "They're almost here." Briggs nodded, her gaze hardening. "Get us in range, now." The Odyssey lurched forward, its massive engines firing as it shot through space. The supercarrier's colossal frame seemed to tear through the stars as it pushed toward the incoming fleet. Briggs watched the ships on the monitor, counting the seconds until they would be within firing range. Then the first shot was fired. It wasn't from the Odyssey. A single bolt of energy erupted from one of the enemy ships and rocketed toward them. The blast hit the ship's shields, sending ripples of energy across the surface. Shields holding at 75%. Lieutenant Harris called out, his voice tense. "But they're starting to breach. We need to retaliate." "Return fire," Briggs barked. "Fire all weapons." The supercarrier's massive weapons systems unleashed their power. Plasma cannons, long-range missile launchers, and energy beams shot forward in a deadly barrage. The enemy ships were caught off guard as they were struck by the overwhelming power of humanity's forgotten weapon. But the Galactic Coalition was not a group that would back down easily. They retaliated with deadly precision, firing their own weapons in an attempt to overwhelm the supercarrier. "Enemy ships are regrouping," Ensign Ortiz reported. "They're sending in reinforcements. It's going to be a full-scale assault." Briggs' mind raced as the situation grew more dire. She had expected a fierce battle, but the strength of the Coalition's forces was something she hadn't fully prepared for. Despite the Odyssey's devastating firepower, the enemy numbers were overwhelming. "Keep firing," Briggs shouted, her determination unwavering. "We'll hold the line until we can make a plan. Earth's future depends on us." As the battle raged on, the supercarrier's crew worked tirelessly to maintain the ship's systems. The bridge was a chaotic whirlwind of flashing lights and urgent voices, but in the midst of it all, Commander Briggs remained calm. She knew that every decision she made now would have the fate of humanity hanging in the balance. "Commander," Lieutenant Harris cried out, his voice rising in alarm. "We've got an incoming fleet from the rear. They've surrounded us." Briggs swore under her breath. The situation was getting worse by the minute. They were caught in a deadly pincer, with enemies attacking from all directions. "Activate the supercarrier's special weapons system," Briggs ordered. "We need every advantage we can get." Ortiz's fingers moved rapidly over the console. "Activating now. But it's never been tested. We don't know if it'll work." The supercarrier's massive energy cores hummed louder as the ship's secret weapon powered up. A colossal energy cannon, hidden within the heart of the ship, began to charge. It was a weapon designed to fire a single devastating blast, powerful enough to obliterate an entire fleet. But it would take time. Time they didn't have. "Commander, they're getting closer," Harris warned. "We need to fire now, or we're done for." Briggs gritted her teeth. She knew the risks. Firing the supercarrier's weapon without testing it could backfire, but they had no other choice. "Fire the cannon," she commanded. The ship's heart seemed to tremble as the massive cannon powered up. A blinding, concentrated beam of energy shot out from the supercarrier, slicing through the enemy fleet with terrifying precision. Ships exploded in flashes of light, their hulking forms disintegrating under the power of the blast. For a moment, the battlefield fell silent. The Odyssey had dealt a devastating blow to the Galactic Coalition, but there were still many more ships remaining, and they weren't about to give up easily. "Commander, we've made a dent in their numbers," Ensign Ortiz said, her voice filled with awe. "But they're regrouping. We've only bought ourselves a few minutes." Briggs nodded grimly. The battle was far from over. The supercarrier's weapon had given them a momentary advantage, but they were still outnumbered and outgunned. She could feel the weight of responsibility pressing down on her shoulders. Earth's future was still at risk. "We need to find a way to strike their command ships," Briggs said. "That's where their leadership is. If we take them out, we can turn the tide." The crew nodded, knowing that the real fight was about to begin. The supercarrier's power was now fully unleashed, but would it be enough to save humanity from the wrath of the Galactic Coalition? Only time would tell. The battle was far from over, and the true test of humanity's strength had just begun. The turning point. The supercarrier, though still standing strong, was beginning to show signs of wear. Every system groaned under the immense strain of the ongoing battle. The ship had taken some hits, and its once glowing energy shields were now flickering under the pressure. But Commander Briggs refused to let the crew falter. She knew this was humanity's chance to prove itself. On the bridge, the tension was palpable. The crew was focused, each member understanding the stakes. Outside, the vast battlefield stretched as far as the eye could see, filled with the wreckage of destroyed ships. But the enemy, relentless and numerous, kept coming. "We've taken down a third of their fleet, Commander," Lieutenant Harris reported, his voice tight with exhaustion. "But they're not retreating. If anything, they're getting more aggressive." Briggs stared at the tactical display, her fingers twitching slightly as her mind raced. The Odyssey was a powerful ship, but it was one against many. Their secret weapon had been a success, but the Coalition still had more ships and a tactical advantage in numbers. This battle wasn't going to be won easily. "Any word from Earth?" Briggs asked, her voice quiet, though her tone carried the weight of desperation. Ensign Ortiz shook her head. "No communication. I think they've cut us off. We're on our own, Commander." Briggs clenched her fists, refusing to let the hopelessness of the situation get to her. She couldn't afford to show weakness now, not in front of her crew. They were counting on her to lead them through this. "Reinforcements are still too far away," she muttered, more to herself than anyone else. "It's just us." The supercarrier rocked again as another enemy missile collided with its shields. The hum of the energy fields fluctuated with each impact, and the crew winced at every tremor. Briggs looked at the screen, her heart pounding as another wave of enemy ships came into view. They were closing in fast. "I've got an idea," Commander Briggs said suddenly, her eyes lighting up with determination. "We don't need to win this battle. We just need to survive long enough to turn the tide." She turned to Ortiz, her voice sharper now. "Can we initiate the ship's warp drive in its current state?" Ortiz hesitated, her fingers dancing across the console as she checked the ship's systems. "It's risky, Commander. The warp drive was never meant to be used in combat conditions. We might not make it out if we try." Briggs' eyes narrowed. "We have no choice. If we stay here, we'll be destroyed. The only way to turn this around is to strike them where it hurts, right at their command." She paced around the bridge, each step heavy with the gravity of her decision. "We'll warp behind their lines. If we can catch them off guard, we'll have a chance." Harris, who had been silent for a moment, spoke up. "And if it doesn't work?" Briggs turned, her expression firm. "Then we die fighting. But we die on our terms." There was a brief silence on the bridge as the crew absorbed the weight of her words. It was a dangerous plan, one that would test the limits of their ship and their skills. But in this moment, there was no other choice. Humanity's survival depended on their willingness to take risks, to fight when the odds were stacked against them. Ortiz nodded, her face pale but determined. "I'll initiate the warp drive sequence. It's going to be a bumpy ride." As the crew prepared for the jump, Briggs could feel the tension building. The hum of the warp drive starting to power up was a constant reminder of what was at stake. She could only hope they would be able to pull it off. They didn't have much time left. The Odyssey began to glow, its engines vibrating with raw power as the warp drive came online. The ship seemed to stretch and shimmer, bending space and time. The stars outside blurred as the supercarrier accelerated beyond light speed, making the jump into uncharted territory. The ship rocked violently as they warped through space, the gravitational forces causing everything aboard to shake. But it was nothing compared to the chaos outside. They emerged from warp in the midst of the Galactic Coalition's command fleet, completely undetected. The enemy ships were too focused on the ongoing battle ahead to notice the sudden arrival of the Odyssey. Briggs grinned, her heart pounding with adrenaline. "We're behind their lines. Target their flagship," she ordered immediately. "This is our chance to take out their leadership." The supercarrier's weapons powered up again, and a massive volley of missiles and plasma shots flew toward the Coalition's flagship. The enemy ship had no time to react, and within moments, the flagship was engulfed in an explosion, it all splintering under the weight of the attack. The rest of the Coalition fleet was thrown into disarray. Without their command ship, they were vulnerable. Panic spread through their ranks as the Odyssey unleashed wave after wave of firepower, ripping through the rest of the enemy fleet. "Commander, it's working," Ortiz shouted, her voice filled with excitement. "They're retreating. Their fleet is falling apart." Briggs exhaled slowly, a sense of relief washing over her, but she knew this wasn't the end. The Coalition would regroup, and the war was far from over. But for now, they had achieved the impossible. Humanity had struck back. The Odyssey had proven that they were not to be underestimated. The battle was far from won, but it had shifted in humanity's favor. The Odyssey had done what no one thought possible, and for the first time in a long while, Commander Briggs allowed herself a moment of hope. The aftermath, and the road ahead. The Odyssey hung in the silent void of space, its battered hull now marked with the scars of battle. The once majestic supercarrier, now a testament to humanity's resolve, had delivered a crushing blow to the Galactic Coalition. But even in the face of victory, Commander Briggs knew there was no time to celebrate. The bridge was quiet, the crew still processing what had just happened. They had taken down a significant portion of the Coalition's fleet and decimated their command ship, but this wasn't the end. The war was far from over. The Coalition's response would come soon enough, and humanity would need to be ready. "Damage report," Briggs said, her voice calm, but her mind still racing. Lieutenant Harris, his face pale from the constant strain, glanced at the data readouts. "We've sustained heavy damage, Commander. Shields are down to 30%. Engines are holding, but barely. Several sections of the ship are compromised, and we've lost a few key systems in the rear." He looked up, locking eyes with Briggs. "We can't keep fighting like this. We need repairs, and we need them fast." Briggs nodded, feeling the weight of his words. She had hoped they could keep pushing forward, but the reality was that they were running on fumes. The Odyssey had just completed a miracle, but without resources, they were sitting ducks. The rest of the Coalition might be regrouping, and they would come back stronger, faster. "I know," she said, her voice low. "We'll make it to the nearest colony. We'll have to rest and rebuild." There was a brief pause before Ensign Ortiz spoke up, her voice filled with hesitation. "Commander, what if the Coalition launches a counterattack before we can reach the colony? What if they come after us?" The question lingered in the air. Briggs didn't have an easy answer. The Odyssey was now a symbol, a beacon of humanity's unexpected strength, and the Coalition would surely see it as a threat. They would do everything they could to wipe it out. But Briggs refused to back down. She had seen what humanity was capable of. She had seen how her crew had risen to the challenge. Against all odds, they wouldn't just survive, they would fight back, no matter what. "They will," Briggs said firmly, "but we won't be easy to take down. This ship has proven that. We've taken a hit, but we've proven that humanity isn't to be underestimated. They'll think twice before launching another attack." Harris nodded, his face hardening with determination. "We've got this, Commander. We'll fight for every inch." The bridge crew exchanged glances, their confidence starting to rebuild. They had seen the Odyssey rise from the ashes. They had seen the impossible become possible, and they were ready to face whatever came next. Briggs took a deep breath, her eyes scanning the bridge. She could see it in their faces, their determination, their hope. The crew had been through hell, but they had stood their ground. They had delivered a blow to the coalition that would be felt for a long time to come. "It's not over," she said, her voice stronger now, filled with purpose. "This is just the beginning. We've awakened something in the galaxy. They'll come for us, but we'll be ready. We're not just a symbol now. We're a force to be reckoned with." The Odyssey slowly turned toward the distant colony, its engines humming with life as they set their course. The battle had been won, but the war was far from over. The road ahead would be long, and the enemy would not stop hunting them. But humanity had taken its first steps onto the galactic stage, and there was no turning back now. In the silence of space, the Odyssey moved forward, carrying the hopes of Earth with it. The crew knew that their fight wasn't just for survival, it was for their future, for the future of all humanity. And as the stars stretched out before them, Commander Briggs couldn't help but feel a sense of optimism, something she hadn't felt in a long time. They were far from alone in this vast universe. But humanity had just made its mark, and the galaxy would never forget it. The distress signal. In the vastness of space, beyond the reach of any known civilization, a quiet planet lay in the shadow of an impending doom. The Tylenians, an ancient and proud race, had ruled their corner of the galaxy for millennia. They had known peace, they had known power, and they had believed they were invincible. But now, for the first time in their long history, they faced something they could not overcome. A terrifying alien force, known only as the Dark Star Empire, had arrived at the Tylenians' doorstep. No one knew where they came from or how they had appeared, but their power was undeniable. Entire worlds had already fallen to their might, and now it was the Tylenians' turn. Their great fleets had been shattered, their cities reduced to rubble, and their people scattered to the wind. The Xylenians were running out of time. Desperation gripped the leaders of the Xylenian Council. They knew they needed help, and they knew their only hope lay with the galaxy's other civilizations. But whom could they turn to? The galaxy was filled with powerful species, but none had the kind of force necessary to stop the Dark Star Empire. Or so they thought. The Xylenians had heard of humans. Small, insignificant in the grand scale of things. They thought. Their primitive technology, their small, fragile planet. How could they possibly stand up to an empire of such strength? But the Tylenians were wrong. Desperation led them to make the ultimate decision. In a secret council meeting, the Xylenian leaders debated their options. They discussed alliances with other powerful races, but none seemed willing to help. The Dark Star Empire was too much for anyone. And then one brave elder suggested something no one expected. "What if we contact the humans?" he asked, his voice trembling slightly as he spoke. "What if Earth could help?" The room fell silent. The idea was almost laughable, but the elder was insistent. "We may not have a choice. We have no time left. If we don't try, we will be wiped out." After hours of debate, it was decided. The Xylenians would send a distress signal, a call for help, directly to Earth. It was a long shot, but it was all they had. The message was simple but urgent. "We are the Xylenians. Our planet is under attack. We seek assistance against the Dark Star Empire. We beg for your help. Without it, we will fall. Please, do not ignore our plea." The signal was sent through a series of complex communication relays that reached across the stars, traveling light years to Earth. The Xylenians watched helplessly as their message vanished into the void, hoping against hope that someone, anyone, would hear it. For weeks, the Xylenians waited in terror, knowing their time was running out. The Dark Star Empire's fleet was closing in, their warships massive and relentless. The Xylenians' last defense was crumbling, and soon they would have no choice but to surrender or face annihilation. On Earth, the response was immediate. The humans received the distress signal with an urgency they hadn't expected. At first, Earth's leaders were skeptical. Why would anyone send such a plea to humanity, of all races? But when they understood the scale of the threat, the destruction of entire planets by an unstoppable force, they knew they couldn't ignore it. Earth's military forces were not the largest in the galaxy, but they had something that Xylenians didn't know about: determination. Humanity's entire history had been filled with struggles, from ancient wars on Earth to space battles against other civilizations. The humans had a fighting spirit that could not be matched. Within hours, Earth's leaders made a decision. A fleet would be assembled, and humanity would answer the call. But this was no ordinary fleet. It was a fleet of Earth's most powerful warships, many of which had never been used in battle before. Ships designed to withstand the most brutal attacks, equipped with technologies unknown to most other races. The Xylenians had no idea what was coming. As Earth's ships began their preparations, the Xylenians couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope for the first time in weeks. Maybe humanity could help them after all. Maybe this small, seemingly insignificant race would turn the tide in their favor. But even as the Earth fleet made its way to the Xylenian system, a strange sense of uncertainty lingered. Would the humans arrive in time? And more importantly, would they be able to fight against the Dark Star Empire's overwhelming power? The Xylenians watched as their enemy drew closer, their massive warships darkening the skies above their planet. It was only a matter of days before the final battle would begin. Would Earth's fleet be the salvation they hoped for, or would it be too late? As the distress signal echoed in the stars, the Xylenians waited, unsure of what would come next. The fate of their entire civilization rested in the hands of a species they had never taken seriously: humanity. Would Earth's wrath be enough to stop the unstoppable? Time was running out, and there was no turning back. The arrival. As the days passed, the Xylenians' hope grew, but so did their fear. Every hour felt like an eternity. The Dark Star Empire's fleet loomed ever closer, its shadow stretching across the star system. And still, Earth's answer was nowhere to be seen. The Xylenians knew they were running out of time. Their defenses were crumbling, and soon, the first waves of the enemy would reach their homeworld. The Xylenian leaders gathered once again in their command center, their faces grave. Their once proud cities now lay in ruins, and their military might was barely a shadow of its former self. As they stared out at the approaching fleet on the holographic displays, the question on everyone's mind was whether the humans would arrive in time. "They said they would come," said High Commander Velkar, his voice hoarse from stress. "They have to come." "Do you really believe they can stop this?" asked Elder Thalmar, his voice laced with doubt. "Their ships are small, their technology primitive." "We have no choice," Velkar replied firmly. "If they can't, we're lost. But we must hold on, we must believe." Just as the Council's nerves were beginning to fray, a soft peep echoed through the command center. The transmission from Earth had been received. It was a message. They stared at the screen in silence as the message from Earth's High Command began to play. "Xylenian Command, we have received your plea. Humanity has heard your call for help. We are on our way. Prepare for the arrival of Earth's fleet." The Xylenians exchanged stunned looks. The words were simple, but the weight of the message was heavy. Earth was sending its fleet, and with that, a new glimmer of hope ignited. Across the galaxy, Earth's fleet prepared for its journey. It was an enormous undertaking. Earth's most advanced warships, ships that had never been used in battle before, were being deployed. The fleet, though small compared to the overwhelming power of the Dark Star Empire, had something the other civilizations in the galaxy did not: a fierce determination and the will to fight against any force that threatened their existence. The Xylenians had no idea what they were about to witness. They had expected Earth's fleet to be much like their own: small, with outdated technology and few advanced weapons. What they didn't know was that Earth had been quietly preparing for this moment for years. Its scientists had developed secret technologies, unimaginable to the rest of the galaxy. ships that could withstand brutal assaults and weapons powerful enough to tear through the strongest armor. The journey to the Silenian system took several days, but Earth's fleet was ready. The ships, sleek and designed for both speed and power, moved through the vast reaches of space at an impressive pace. These weren't just warships. They were a symbol of Earth's resilience, a sign that humanity could never be defeated as long as it had the will to survive. Captain Sarah Novak stood on the bridge of the flagship Liberty, watching the stars streak by as the fleet raced toward their destination. Her hands were steady on the controls, but in her heart, uncertainty gnawed at her. This was the first time humanity would face an enemy like the Dark Star Empire, a force that had already crushed entire worlds. Could they really win? Could Earth's ships, untested in combat, stand against this unstoppable foe? She turned to her crew. Prepare for battle. No one knows what we're walking into, but we will fight with everything we have. We will show them that humanity does not back down. Her words stirred something in the crew. They weren't just fighting for the Silenians. They were fighting for their own survival, for the future of their species. If the Dark Star Empire succeeded in destroying the Silenians, who was next? As Earth's fleet entered the Silenian system, they came across the first signs of the Dark Star Empire. The skies above Silenia were filled with enormous warships, their sleek, dark designs unlike anything Earth had ever seen. The ships loomed like shadows, ominous and cold. But the Earth fleet wasn't afraid. As they approached the battlefront, Captain Novak's voice rang out across the comms, a calm, determined order. We're going in. Form up and prepare for battle. This is it. In the distance, the Silenian planet lay just within sight. Their world was still alive, but for how much longer? Earth's fleet arrived just in time to witness the beginning of the Dark Star Empire's assault. The enemy fleet moved in, its massive warships already beginning their bombardment of the Silenian cities. The war was about to begin. The Earth fleet, though small, was not without its weapons. As the ships formed their battle lines, their weapon systems powered up, ready to fire. The Dark Star Empire might have numbers, but humanity had something far more powerful, an unyielding will to fight. Earth's ships fired their first shots, small compared to the enemy's arsenal, but enough to make their presence known. It wasn't much, just the first strike in a battle that would decide the fate of the Silenian people and the galaxy itself. But to the Silenians, it was everything. The humans had answered their call, and now they were ready to stand beside them, in the face of annihilation. As the battle raged on, the Silenians watched in awe and disbelief. Humanity, a species they had once seen as insignificant, was now their only hope. And as Earth's fleet unleashed its first wave of attacks, the Silenians realized they were not alone. The battle had begun. The first strike. The battle was upon them. Earth's fleet had arrived just in time to see the Dark Star Empire's warships raining destruction down on the Silenian homeworld. The bright, burning cities of Silenia, once bustling with life, were now nothing more than smoldering ruins. The Silenian people, already on the brink of extinction, watched helplessly as their last bastion of hope was being destroyed before their very eyes. But then, the first strike came from Earth's fleet. It wasn't much, just a few missiles launched from the lead ship, the Liberty. The enemy's warships were massive, far larger than Earth's, but the missiles streaked through space with incredible speed, slamming into the Dark Star vessels with a force that sent shockwaves across the battlefield. The massive warships were caught off guard, their shields flickering as they struggled to deflect the unexpected assault. For a moment, it seemed like the enemy didn't even know what had hit them. The Silenian commanders, watching from their last stronghold, stared in disbelief. Had the humans really done that? Did they just hit them? Asked Commander Velkar, his voice barely a whisper. Elder Thalmar was equally stunned. Impossible. Their ships are so much smaller. How could they? Before he could finish his sentence, another wave of fire erupted from Earth's fleet. This time, It wasn't just missiles. The ships began to fire laser blasts, their weapons crackling with intense energy. The Dark Star warships, despite their massive size, were being overwhelmed by the speed and precision of Earth's attacks. The Liberty led the charge, its weapons blazing as it darted between enemy ships, firing on the move. The Dark Star Empire's warships were slow to react, and by the time they tried to return fire, Earth's ships were already out of range, weaving through the stars like skilled predators on the hunt. "Keep it up." Captain Sarah Novik's voice echoed across the fleet's comms. "Do not let them regroup. Target their weak points. Hit them fast. Hit them hard." Her orders were clear and precise. The Earth fleet, despite being outnumbered, moved like a well-oiled machine. Every ship knew its role. Every crew member focused on the task at hand. The humans were not afraid. They were determined to win. The Exilenians had placed their trust in Earth, and they would not let them down. As Earth's fleet continued to press the attack, the Dark Star Empire began to struggle. Their ships, though powerful, were no match for the speed and agility of Earth's fleet. The humans' advanced technology, which had been secretly developed for years, was now on full display. They had weaponry that the Dark Star Empire had never seen before, and they used it to full advantage. The Dark Star Empire's response was swift. Their warships began to return fire, launching massive energy blasts that lit up the starry sky. But even with their devastating firepower, they couldn't land a hit on the smaller, faster Earth ships. It was a battle of speed versus brute force, and the humans were winning. At least for now. "We're making progress," Captain Novik called out, her eyes scanning the battlefield as another explosion rocked a Dark Star ship. "They're retreating, but don't let them escape." The Exilenians watched in awe as the battle unfolded before them. The humans, who they had once thought of as weak and primitive, were turning the tide of the war. Their ships were not only holding their own, but they were pushing the Dark Star Empire back. The Exilenians had never seen anything like it. These humans, these so-called inferior beings, were fighting with everything they had. One by one, Dark Star warships fell. Explosions rippled through the fleet, sending ships spinning out of control. The humans weren't just holding their ground, they were winning. And with every enemy ship that was destroyed, the Exilenians felt a spark of hope grow brighter. But the Dark Star Empire wasn't finished yet. As the battle raged on, a new threat emerged. From the depths of the enemy fleet, a massive warship appeared. It was far larger than any ship the humans had encountered before. Its hull was dark, sleek, and almost indestructible. This was the Dark Star Empire's flagship, the Endbringer, and it was a force to be reckoned with. "Brace yourselves," Captain Novik shouted as the massive warship loomed in front of them. "All ships, focus fire on the Endbringer. We take that down, and the rest of them will fall." The Endbringer unleashed a barrage of fire, its massive weapons targeting Earth's ships. The Liberty dodged, weaving through the barrage with lightning speed. But even Earth's best ships were no match for the sheer size and power of the Endbringer. Its weapons could vaporize a ship with a single shot. "Keep evasive maneuvers. We can't let it hit us," Novak ordered. The Earth fleet had no choice but to avoid the Endbringer's deadly fire while continuing to hit the smaller Dark Star ships. The Exilenians could only watch as the humans faced down this new threat. Would they be able to defeat the Endbringer? Or was this the point where the tide of battle would turn? The battle was far from over, but one thing was clear. Earth's fleet had already shocked the galaxy. The humans, once thought weak, had proven their strength. Now, as they faced the mighty Endbringer, they would show the Dark Star Empire what true power looked like. The fall of the Endbringer. The Endbringer loomed in the distance, its dark, imposing silhouette cutting through the void of space. The flagship of the Dark Star Empire was a titan, dwarfing the other enemy ships with its sheer size and destructive potential. Its weapons glowed with terrifying intensity as it prepared to unleash hell upon Earth's fleet. Captain Sarah Novik's pulse quickened as the Endbringer fired another volley of energy blasts. The shots were massive, each one capable of obliterating an entire fleet if they connected. Earth's ships were fast, but they were small compared to this behemoth. Dodging these blasts would be no easy task. "We can't outrun it forever," Captain Novik muttered under her breath. Her crew was working at full capacity, but even they could see the truth. The Endbringer was designed to be an unstoppable force, and Earth's fleet was running out of options. "Status report." Novik barked, her eyes locked on the giant warship. "Shields at 40%, Captain. We can't keep dodging like this." Lieutenant Morris shouted from his station. "The Endbringer is too powerful. We need to find a way to fight back, or we'll be torn apart." "We're not giving up." Novik's voice was firm, but her hands gripped the console tightly. She knew they couldn't survive another direct hit. "Target its weak points. If we can disable their shields, we might stand a chance. All ships, focus fire on the Endbringer. We have to break through." The orders were relayed quickly, and Earth's fleet began to concentrate their fire on the Endbringer. Smaller, faster ships darted in and out of the Endbringer's fire, launching missiles and energy blasts aimed at the flagship's vulnerable sections. The smaller Dark Star ships were still attacking, trying to overwhelm Earth's fleet, but the humans were relentless. For a moment, it seemed like the Endbringer might shrug off the assault. The flagship's shields flickered and sparked but held strong. But Earth's ships weren't giving up. They were closing in. "Captain, we've got a breach in their shields." Lieutenant Morris shouted, his voice full of disbelief. "The Endbringer's shield generator is down." The Hexylenians, watching from their own position in space, could hardly believe their eyes. The humans had done it. They had broken through the Endbringer's shields. The Hexylenian commanders, who had initially doubted Earth's ability to face the Dark Star Empire head-on, now exchanged stunned glances. "They've done it," Commander Velkar whispered. "The humans are actually taking it down." But even as Earth's fleet began to make progress, the Endbringer wasn't finished. The flagship's weapons continued to fire, each blast causing shockwaves that rattled Earth's ships. The Endbringer had a final trick up its sleeve, self-repair systems that kicked in to restore its defenses. It wasn't going to go down without a fight. "We need to finish it now," Captain Novik ordered. "All ships, focus on the core. We disable the core, and the rest of the ship will fall." The Liberty led the charge, darting straight toward the Endbringer's massive hull. Earth's fleet followed close behind, each ship unleashing a final barrage of missiles and laser fire. The Dark Star Empire flagship was desperate now, its weapons firing wildly, but the humans were too quick. They had already found the weakness, and they weren't going to stop until they exploited it. The Endbringer's outer defenses crumpled under the relentless assault. A massive explosion erupted from the flagship's core, sending shockwaves rippling across the battlefield. The Endbringer began to spin out of control, its once immense form now burning and broken. "Target the engines. Disable them completely," Novik commanded, her voice steely and resolute. The humans weren't going to stop until they had fully neutralized the threat. The Endbringer's engines were hit by a final barrage, and with a deafening explosion, the flagship of the Dark Star Empire was reduced to a burning hulk. The remaining Dark Star warships, seeing their greatest weapon fall, hesitated. For the first time in the battle, doubt began to creep into their ranks. Could they win without the Endbringer? The Hexylenians, who had been holding their breath, finally let out a collective sigh of relief. They couldn't believe it. They had actually done it. The humans had defeated the Endbringer, and with it, they had shattered the morale of the Dark Star Empire. But the battle wasn't over yet. "Don't get complacent," Captain Novik warned, her voice a low growl. "We've won a battle, not the war. Keep your eyes open. We're not out of the woods yet." As Earth's fleet moved to secure the wreckage of the Endbringer, the remaining Dark Star ships began to retreat. But the damage was done. Earth's fleet had delivered a blow that the Dark Star Empire would never forget. The Exilenians watched in awe as Earth's ships reformed into battle formation, their confidence growing by the second. The humans had shown the galaxy what they were capable of. And it was only the beginning. The victory at the Endbringer marked a turning point in the war, but it was clear that the Dark Star Empire was not yet finished. As Earth's fleet pressed forward, the Exilenians knew that the galaxy would never be the same again. Humanity had risen to the challenge, and now the war was on their terms. The enemy's counterstrike. The battlefield was quiet now, the wreckage of the Endbringer still glowing with the embers of its fiery demise. Humanity's fleet regrouped, their victory undeniable but their resolve steeled for what lay ahead. Captain Sarah Novak, aboard the Liberty, studied the star charts before her. The Dark Star Empire wasn't known for retreating. They would strike back, and soon. "They're not going to take this defeat lightly," Novak said, her voice sharp. "We need to be ready." The crew nodded in agreement, their exhaustion hidden behind determined faces. The loss of the Endbringer was a devastating blow to the Dark Star Empire, but it wouldn't stop their thirst for domination. The question wasn't if they would retaliate, it was when. In the shadowy depths of the Dark Star Empire, Emperor Kale stood before his war council. His cold, reptilian eyes burned with rage as he replayed the footage of the battle. The Endbringer, their symbol of invincibility, had been reduced to ash. And by whom? The humans, a species the Empire had deemed insignificant. "They have humiliated us," Kale growled, his voice sending chills down the spines of his advisors. "The galaxy is watching. They think we are weak. We cannot let this stand." The council murmured in agreement, their minds already racing with strategies for vengeance. Admiral Varix, Kal's most trusted commander, stepped forward. "Your Majesty, the humans are resilient, but they are not invincible," Varix said. "Their fleet is small. If we strike now, with overwhelming force, we can crush their morale before they gain more allies." Kal's lips curled into a sinister smile. "Very well. Gather the Armada. Show them what it means to challenge the Dark Star Empire." The attack came without warning. Humanity's fleet had barely finished repairs when the enemy Armada descended upon them. Wave after wave of Dark Star warships emerged from hyperspace, their weapons blazing. Unlike before, there was no hesitation, no posturing. This was an all-out assault. "They're coming in from every direction," Lieutenant Morris shouted, panic creeping into his voice. "Hold your ground," Novak ordered, her voice cutting through the chaos. "This isn't the time to panic. Focus on the smaller ships first. Break their formation." Earth's fleet scrambled to counter the onslaught. The sleek human ships danced through enemy fire, taking down fighters and frigates wherever they could. But the sheer number of enemy ships was overwhelming. The humans had proven their strength, but now they were outnumbered 10-1. "Captain, the Valor is taking heavy damage," another officer called out. "They won't hold much longer." Novak clenched her fists. The Valor was one of their strongest cruisers. Losing it would be a devastating blow. "Redirect the Resolute to cover them," she commanded. "And tell the Valor to fall back to the second line. We need to protect our heavy hitters." As Earth's fleet struggled to maintain its formation, the Dark Star Empire unleashed their newest weapon, a colossal siege platform, bristling with long-range cannons. Positioned at the edge of the battlefield, it began raining destruction upon the humans from afar. The first blast struck the Vanguard, tearing through its shields and crippling its engines. The crew barely had time to evacuate before the ship exploded in a blinding flash of light. "We can't take much more of this," Morris shouted. "That siege platform will pick us off one by one." Novak's mind raced. The platform was too far for their ships to reach without exposing themselves to the full might of the enemy Armada. But if they didn't destroy it, the entire fleet would be lost. "Send out a strike team," Novak said suddenly. We'll need our fastest ships to slip past their lines and take out that platform. Captain, that's a suicide mission, Morris protested. Maybe, Novak admitted, her eyes hard. But it's our only chance. The strike team, led by Commander Ethan Reyes aboard the Phantom, darted into the fray. Their ships were small and nimble, designed for speed rather than firepower. As they weaved through enemy formations, the rest of Earth's fleet redoubled their efforts, creating a distraction to draw the Empire's focus. Keep it tight, Reyes called out. We only get one shot at this. The Phantom and its escorts dodged and darted, narrowly avoiding enemy fire. The siege platform loomed closer, its massive cannons swiveling to target them. Reyes's heart pounded in his chest as he calculated their approach. Arm the torpedoes, he ordered. We'll hit it with everything we've got. The platform fired, narrowly missing the Phantom. Reyes gritted his teeth and pushed the ship's engines to their limit. Steady, steady, he murmured. Finally, the moment came. The strike team unleashed a coordinated barrage of torpedoes, each one aimed at the platform's central power core. The explosions rippled across the massive structure, and for a moment, it seemed to hold. But then, with a deafening roar, the platform detonated, sending debris flying in every direction. Cheers erupted across Earth's fleet as the platform's destruction tipped the scales. The Dark Star Armada faltered, their lines breaking as confusion spread among their ranks. Push forward, Novak ordered. Drive them back. With newfound momentum, Earth's fleet surged ahead, turning the tide of the battle. The Dark Star Empire's forces retreated, their plans for vengeance thwarted once again. But Novak knew this was only the beginning. The Empire would return, stronger and more determined, and Earth would have to be ready. Earth's unyielding resolve. The battlefield lay in eerie silence. The wreckage of ships, human and alien alike, drifted in the void, a grim testament to the ferocity of the battle. Captain Sarah Novak stood on the bridge of the Liberty, her hands gripping the railing as her crew worked tirelessly to assess the damage. "How bad is it?" she asked, her voice calm but strained. Lieutenant Morris looked up from his console, his face pale. "We've lost 6 ships, including the Valor and the Vanguard. Casualties are significant." Novak closed her eyes for a moment, the weight of the losses pressing down on her. Yet, deep inside, she felt a spark of defiance. Earth had survived worse. They always did. "Begin recovery operations," she ordered, "and get me a direct line to Earth Command." On the other side of the galaxy, the leaders of humanity gathered in the Grand Council Hall. Holographic displays showed real-time updates from the fleet, each new report adding to the grim mood in the room. President Elena Carrington, a seasoned leader known for her unshakable determination, addressed the council. "The Dark Star Empire has escalated this conflict beyond anything we've faced before," Carrington said, her voice firm. "They are not just attacking our fleet. They are testing our will to survive." The council murmured in agreement. General Marcus Reed, head of Earth's military forces, leaned forward in his seat. "We can't let them regroup. If we give them time, they'll return with a force even greater than what we just faced." Carrington nodded. "Agreed. But we also can't afford to rush in blindly. We need a strategy that strikes at the heart of their empire." The room fell silent as they contemplated their next move. Finally, Admiral Jane Carter, one of Earth's most brilliant tacticians, spoke up. "Their strength lies in their perception of invincibility," Carter said. "If we can shatter that illusion, not just for them, but for the entire galaxy, we'll turn the tide of this war. We need to hit them where it hurts most, their central command." Gasps rippled through the council. Attacking the heart of the Dark Star Empire was a bold, almost reckless idea. But it was also their best chance. Back aboard the Liberty, Novak received her orders. The fleet was to prepare for a counterstrike, a mission to infiltrate and cripple the Dark Star Empire's central command. It was a task fraught with danger, but one that could end the war in humanity's favor. "Captain, are we really doing this?" Morris asked, his voice tinged with both awe and fear. "We're going straight into the lion's den." Novik's lips twitched into a faint smile. "It wouldn't be the first time humans did the impossible, Lieutenant, and it won't be the last." The crew got to work, their exhaustion replaced by a renewed sense of purpose. The fleet began repairs and resupply efforts, preparing for the mission that would define the fate of humanity. Engineers worked around the clock to upgrade the ships, implementing the latest in human ingenuity to give them a fighting chance. Meanwhile, Novak and her officers studied the intelligence reports. The Dark Star Empire's central command was located on a heavily fortified planet surrounded by a vast network of defense systems. Getting through would require more than just brute force. It would take cunning and precision. "We'll use their arrogance against them," Novak said during a strategy meeting. "They'll expect us to attack head-on. Instead, we'll come at them from the shadows." In the heart of the Dark Star Empire, Emperor Kale seethed with fury. The humans had once again defied him, and their fleet remained a thorn in his side. "Double the defenses around the command center," Kale ordered his generals. "If they dare to approach, they will be annihilated." But even as Kale prepared for Earth's retaliation, he underestimated the determination and ingenuity of his enemies. As the fleet departed from Earth, a quiet resolve filled the air. Families said their goodbyes, knowing that many of these brave men and women might not return. Novak stood on the bridge of the Liberty, her gaze fixed on the stars ahead. "This is it," she said to her crew. "We're not just fighting for survival. We're fighting for everything humanity stands for. Let's show them what it means to be human." The fleet vanished into hyperspace, their course set for the Dark Star Empire's stronghold. The mission ahead was dangerous, but humanity had never been known to back down from a challenge. As they sped toward their destiny, one thing was clear: Earth's wrath would not be denied. The wrath of humanity. The fleet emerged from hyperspace on the edge of the Dark Star Empire's central system. Before them lay the target, a massive planet surrounded by orbital defenses, battle stations, and an armada of ships ready to repel any attack. The scale of the enemy's preparations was staggering, but Captain Novak felt no hesitation. "All ships, hold formation," she commanded. Her voice was calm, cutting through the tension like a blade. "This is what we've trained for." The fleet maintained radio silence as they advanced. Every crew member knew the stakes. Humanity wasn't just fighting for survival. They were fighting for justice, for the future, and for the memory of the innocent lives lost. Inside the Empire's command center, Emperor Kale watched the human fleet's arrival with disdain. "They dare to challenge us here," he sneered. "Fools, destroy them." The Empire's ships surged forward, a massive wave of firepower designed to overwhelm any opposition. But the humans had anticipated this. "Deploy countermeasures," Novak ordered. "Activate the decoys." Suddenly, dozens of unmanned drones burst from the human fleet, mimicking the energy signatures of their warships. The Empire's forces hesitated, firing at the false targets and wasting their opening salvos. "That's our cue," Novak said. "All ships, engage." The battle erupted into chaos. Human ships weaved through the enemy ranks with precision, their advanced technology and daring tactics turning the tide. Massive dreadnoughts unleashed devastating volleys, cutting swaths through the Empire's armada. Smaller frigates flanked and harassed the enemy, exploiting every weakness. On board the Liberty, Novak coordinated the assault, her command swift and decisive. "Target their command ships. Take out their coordination." A bright explosion lit up the void as a key enemy battleship was destroyed. Cheers echoed across the human fleet, but the victory was short-lived. "Captain, enemy reinforcements inbound," Lieutenant Morris shouted. On the holographic display, a second wave of ships appeared, even larger than the first. The Empire was throwing everything they had into the fight. "Stay the course," Novak said firmly. "We're not backing down." Meanwhile, a stealth team led by Commander Elena Park infiltrated the planet's surface. Their mission was to disable the Empire's planetary defense grid, allowing the fleet to strike at the command center directly. The team moved swiftly through the shadows, evading patrols and automated turrets. Park's voice came through the comms. "We're approaching the control center. Stand by." Back in orbit, the human fleet was holding its ground, but the cost was high. Ships were taking heavy damage, and casualties were mounting. Novak knew they couldn't hold out much longer. "Commander Park, we need that grid down now," she said, her voice taut with urgency. "We're on it," Park replied. "Just a little longer." Inside the command center, Kale watched the battle with growing frustration. The humans were proving far more resilient than he'd expected. "How are they still standing?" he growled. "Increase the pressure. Crush them." His generals scrambled to obey, but their efforts were in vain. The humans fought with a determination that defied logic, their unity and resolve shining like a beacon amidst the darkness. On the surface, Park's team breached the control center. A fierce firefight ensued, but the humans pushed through. With seconds to spare, they hacked into the system and disabled the defense grid. "Captain Novak, the grid is down," Park announced. Novak didn't hesitate. "All ships target the planet's command center. Fire at will." The fleet unleashed its full might. Massive energy beams and missiles rained down on the planet, obliterating the Empire's defenses and striking deep into the heart of their command. Explosions rippled across the surface, and the Empire's forces began to falter. In his final moments, Kale stood amidst the crumbling command center, disbelief etched on his face. "Impossible. How could mere humans?" His words were cut off as a massive explosion consumed the room. The battle was over. The human fleet, battered but victorious, regrouped. Cheers and tears of relief spread through the crews as the realization set in. They had won. On board the Liberty, Novak stood before her crew, her voice filled with both pride and sorrow. "We've shown the galaxy what humanity stands for. Justice, resilience, unity. But this victory came at a great cost. Let us honor those who gave their lives today, and let their sacrifice never be forgotten." As the fleet began its journey home, messages of hope and gratitude poured in from across the galaxy. The humans' actions had not only secured their survival, but had inspired countless others to stand against tyranny. Earth's wrath had been unleashed, and the galaxy would never forget it.